what has your experience been? Like, in your words, how would you summarize the way AI has changed over these years? What do you think like the strategy should be for AI leaders to motivate their team to like get started with the tool? What is your view of skill set and area of expertise, or like how learning should look like for early AI professionals? If you're leading an AI team, building your career, or just trying to stay relevant in the age of AI, this episode will hit home. Welcome to Control Alt AI, and today I'm joined by Ethan Evans, former vice president at Amazon, who has led through e-commerce, cloud, and now Gen AI. We're talking about how leadership is evolving and how to integrate AI without creating fear, and why human judgment still matters even when models look flawless. Thanks a ton, Ethan, for joining me on my podcast. I have been an ardent follower of your content on LinkedIn. Like I've been seeing you all over the place. I've been seeing you doing some amazing things, and if I must say, like, I love your energy. I love how you're always experimenting with new things or the other. And I think that's one thing that's there to learn for all of us, which is that no matter what stage of your career you're in, no matter how experienced you're in, keep learning and keep trying new things.
Well, thank you very much for having me as a guest. I love to talk to new people and meet them. I appreciate your kind words about what I do. It is true that I love to test and experiment because that's the only way to learn and improve.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, you have gone through so many different industries like e-commerce, cloud, and now AI. You've been in this space for like quite some time, and even like at Amazon for like such a long time. I want to hear it from you. Like, what has your experience been? Like, in your words, how would you summarize the way AI has changed over these years? And over these years, like, you've probably seen like the early stage of cloud as well, right? So do you see any similarities of how cloud changed the tech ecosystem? And do you see any similar activities happening because of AI as well?
Wow. You just start with a really simple, small, basic question. I was a graduate student at Carnegie Mellon's Robotics Institute, which was talking about the kind of AI we have now then, and it seemed very fantastic and far away. So the first thing is, it's just amazing to see things that we discussed in the 90s, 30 years later, actually here. I did see Amazon enter the cloud business. I got to watch all that. I knew the leaders of some of the early teams, particularly the leader of the S3 team, which was the first real AWS service launched. I think AWS launched to a more business and entrepreneurial audience, and with things that were much more hands-on, like clear Lego blocks. And so it didn't undergo the same hype wave that AI has done in the popular imagination. Early days of cloud stayed within the tech industry. And while people were excited about it, they weren't so over the moon about it. And so I would say a difference is now that Gen AI is here, it's getting a lot more public press and public hype. No one, for example, ever said, oh, cloud technology has a threat of ending the human race. Right. Whereas you do hear people talk about that for AI. And so while it had a big profile, it didn't have that kind of profile.
I do feel like a lot of that contribution is coming from like a million social media platforms that we have, and access to a lot of these information. I feel like somewhere that educational aspect of sharing all of this knowledge, how it's being interpreted correctly or not, is very subjective, because it's just out there, and people just take it the way they want to take it. And I think like that's also like creating some sort of sensationalism within organizations. And I'm actually not discounting the big techs in this, because if you think about it, I've actually heard this from one of my good friends working in a big tech, is that, hey, like, if we end up building these workflows using agentic AI systems, would it risk my job? as part of this? Because you've heard CEOs say that, hey, we are building AI agents for coding co-pilots, and like it's going to be so good that we're not going to need engineers anymore. So that somewhere like causes this sensationalism where you're like, hey, like should I go in learning about AI or like building these toolkits, fearing it, having an inertia towards it, or do I have like a more utopian view of it and be like, hey, this is what the future is going to look like, and like I should be part of that wave?
Yeah, well, I strongly take the second view. Look, there is the possibility. One thing AI is very good at is acting as a coach, and that's what I do. So I experienced firsthand. I've built and released to the public a coaching bot based on 500,000 of my written words, and it's quite good. Luckily, people tell me it's not quite as good as I am, but on the other hand, it's available 24/7 for free. And so that kind of power, AI will get better faster than I will get better. So I live this fear that one day AI will eat at least my current job as I know it today, but I can't do anything about that. And I think I'm better off embracing AI and experimenting with it and learning what I can do. Now, you can sort of decide, is there a dystopian future where, general intelligence AI replaces all human work, and then we have this societal problem? Or is there more of a utopian future where general AI or not, it does all the drudge work and humans are free to only pursue art and creativity, and because manufacturing things is now easy and done by robots, we're all effectively wealthy in different levels? That future, I'm not good enough to prognosticate that, to be sure, but I run towards AI. I do find that run a little bit exhausting and overwhelming because of the speed at which it moves.
Fair. All on. Like in very fairness, like how would you recommend leaders to go about motivating their team, or like making them feel that, hey, like because you're going to be using these tools or working on building these tools, you're not going to get replaced? Like what do you think like the strategy should be for AI leaders to motivate their team to like get started with the tool?
Yeah, well, I think part of the motivation or motivational problem, if you're a leader, is you can't understand this as like a technology adoption. You have to think of it more as change management. You're trying to change how people work, how they think, and people normally resist change because change is scary, it's risky, it's easier to see the downsides, like I might lose my job, than to see the upsides, like I might be freed to do much more valuable work where I can be paid more and I can accomplish more. It's a lot easier, for me included, to see the risks. And so change management is a well-known science, but not one that all leaders have studied in terms of how to bring a group towards a new goal or understanding that requires them to change behaviors, thoughts, and comfortable actions. There's so many books on this that some people will at least heard of, but Who Moved My Cheese is a classic book on change management. I Moved Your Cheese is a great sequel that I prefer. There's books by the Heath brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. The books Switch, and they have a new one that's about changing systems. I can't remember, Reset maybe. Anyway, you can learn about this science, and I think my advice to leaders would be, don't view this as, oh, hey, you better be using ChatGPT. You have to go a lot deeper than that and say, where are we going? Why are we using it? And what's it going to enable us to do? And then how do I make it safe for my team to get there? And that's really a change management process more than anything.
And what would your recommendation be in terms of like, going with a human judgment versus a machine judgment? I think like that's one of the biggest dilemmas that we have to go with, because a lot of times, like, we know that from a computational perspective, from a unbiased nature of a machine judgment perspective, AI models are better in several workflows because it takes out the human biases, it takes out the bottlenecks that we as humans bring into workflows. But what are some of the use cases where you would say that, yes, I agree that machines could be better at it, or like AI models could be better at it? But these are some of the situations where we either should have human in the loop, or we should have like a higher degree of control to humans compared to AI models.
Well, I think the classic example of this, just last week, I had the chance to spend several days at the U.S. Army War College, where a collection of colonels and generals were invited some civilians in, and we were discussing AI-controlled weapons. And if it isn't being done already, in the conflict in Ukraine, there's the potential that fully autonomous weapons are being built that will attempt to hunt and kill what they identify as enemies with no further human intervention. Super questionable and dangerous. Another example is unfortunately these issues are highly political. I'm just discussing the technology at the moment, but Israel has been public about the fact that they have a system called the Gospel that they use to select targets for their actions. And that system factors in how many innocent people might be caught in an attack to try and eliminate a combatant. Well, they claim there's always a human in that decision, and I sure hope so, because a system can tell you, we have this confidence that this person is a bad person from our perspective and that we'd like to attack them, but we also have this much confidence that maybe this many civilians will be in the way. A human better be making the final value judgment of, are we willing to take that risk of civilian casualties in order to eliminate this potentially dangerous person? Now, I recognize that on any given conflict, I will trigger people because they feel differently about the conflict. That's not what I'm trying to do. You just asked for an example of where do we really need humans in the loop? Well, the first place I would say the most obvious case is weapon systems that, could go Terminator like the movie or could continue to have a human in the loop. And I think that's a great place to have a person.
Yeah, makes sense. And how would you do you feel like there is a good playbook to for maybe like managers to follow, or leaders to like think about going about like implementing these AI toolkits at workflows? Like, what would your recommendation be for maybe managers who are new into this space? And the reason I'm asking this is because a lot of the times that I've seen middle managers or early leaders as well, they have not come from like the technical background that it takes for you to understand how AI models function. Like, what are the technical bottlenecks of these models? What are they good at versus what are they not? So sometimes there is also a skill gap, not from like the IC perspective, but there is a skill gap from the management perspective. So how do you, I know you coach a lot of leadership. So what is your recommendation of how managers should think about it, and how they should use a playbook to know what's the right thing to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me start with a story. I coached someone who's a CXO at a mid-sized company, and their CEO has adopted AI in a bad way. Specifically, every proposal they send to the CEO, he drops into AI and asks it to give 10 possible improvements. And then he sends it back to them and says, make these improvements. Well, this is a lack of understanding of AI, because take whatever you feel is a perfect piece of work, a book, a piece of art, whatever. If you give it to AI and say, suggest 10 improvements, AI is in the business of doing what we ask. And so it would take the painting the Mona Lisa and suggest 10 improvements. And it would take, whatever you consider a great piece of literature and suggest 10 ways to make it better. The CEO isn't understanding that just because it answers your question for 10 improvements, they're not necessarily worthwhile. So with that as a story, I think if a leader doesn't fully understand AI, they probably have either they have some people on their team who do, who can help them understand, and they should leverage that, or they need to go outside and get some of that expertise because, as you note, AI is very powerful, but like anything that's very powerful, it doesn't necessarily make things better. The way I explained it recently is the analogy of a kitchen. If you buy a bigger pot, you can make more of the meal, but a bigger pot and more food doesn't make the food better.
Yeah.
And so AI is more like a bigger pot. It lets you go faster, and faster doesn't equal better. So for managers, I think you have to know what is it you're trying to do. There was a television ad long ago where Apple, I think, was making fun of Windows, but they had a guy who said, I want the one with more GBs. And it was just, I want the phone with more gigabytes. He had no idea what a GB. I want the one with more GBs. You can't approach AI as like, we have to get some AI. So my advice to non-technical managers would be understand what problem you're trying to solve, and then understand how AI can help you solve that and where it can't.
Yeah.
Don't just think, oh, well, if I beat all my people to use AI, my team's going to get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, like Ethan, over the years, like I was recently having this conversation with my mom, and I thought it was pretty funny because my mom still uses pen and, like notebook to write things that she needs to do, or like at times even like bank passwords. So let's not get there. But, like she has this traditional way of doing things, which obviously like we have not, we don't do it the same way. And I feel like the generation that I grew up in, I still feel social media came very late in my life, where I was still in college, and like that's when like all of the social media came in picture. So like my childhood was different, my education was different than what kids are doing right now. And I feel like with AI being more accessible, there was these studies that I was reading about that, like your cognitive ability or like your thinking ability is going to get impacted. And somewhere, I mean, like I do see that with the technological evolution, right? I'm not saying like like the mental capability that my mom had is the same for me. Like it's not, because there's a lot of things that she remembers on top of her mind. Like for example, birthdays of like, 20 random relatives. I don't remember that, because we are like over reliant on technology to like help us with reminders. Like my mom like remembers most of the roads and routes where we grew up. So that's not something that I remember. Like I've stayed in this place for like the last 4 years, 5 years actually. And I still can't remember half of the turns because we're just so reliant on technology. And we're seeing the same level of reliance coming onto AI, where you're like, hey, I don't even need to know how to write a post. I don't even need to know how to write an essay. I don't even need to know how to stitch a sentence together, like something as critical as that. So when we start incorporating AI tools into early early learners like kids, do you think it's going to affect their capability to think? And if so, like what would your recommendations be on like how parents should think about using AI tools, or like how even like we as adults should be using these tools so we don't really become over reliant on them?
Wow. I have to say I'm impressed. You've taken this conversation incredibly deep, which I love. So let's go. First, this is a pattern that appears to be present throughout human history. While there isn't enough scientific evidence to be sure, there is some evidence that the human cranial capacity decreased by about 10% as writing became widespread. Just the ability, like your mom, to write things down rather than the way the ancients had to do it, which was remember everything, reduced even our cognitive capacity, say, as compared to an Aristotle or someone. Coming to the present, I suffer this exact problem. I have recently stopped using maps in my own neighborhood, Google Maps, to force myself to learn the streets, because I moved homes about a year ago to the home, you commented on with the bookshelves here. And I realized that I wasn't learning the streets because I was relying on Google. And so it's exactly what you said. So now we go to the third part. Honestly, when I talk to anyone in high school or college, if they're at all honest, they are completely cheating their way through every class, using AI at a minimum to improve every assignment, and in some cases to just do everything. Mm-hmm. And the professors who talk about this or write about this are realizing that their students, they can no longer even tell two things: that they can't for sure tell when something's done by AI. AI has gotten good enough to hide it. And second, their academic institutions have no desire to engage in the, I think this is AI, so I want to fail the student. Well, you can't, problem. And so more or less, professors and teachers are going to let kids use AI. Mm-hmm. And so that the exact problem you scope is coming full steam. It's already here. What should a parent do? Well, now we're outside of my expertise, but I think the only thing you can do, well, there's two things. Number one, you can encourage the joy of learning rather than the grunt work, right? Try to make learning something for yourself appealing and go down the route of, yes, AI could do this for you, but then you won't know it. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, I think the wave that is coming, I have experimented with using AI as a teacher, specifically a teacher for me as an adaptive teacher, mm-hmm. a teacher that I can ask it, throw things at me. If I get them right, make the questions in this space harder. If I get them wrong, slow down, and there is no reason that in the near future, every student shouldn't have a teacher that adapts to their level. Mm-hmm. And I also told AI, and when I was experimenting with this, I said, look, I get bored easily, but I really enjoy, in my case, outdoors and travel. Frame all of your teaching of me and all the examples in terms of outdoor exploration and travel. So then I'm interested in the material. And so that was a way. So for parents, I would say, again, you're going to have to lean into AI, and as opposed to trying to ban it, try to figure out how you make its use a net positive in your child's real education rather than a crutch. Fair. And I think, by the way, more and more we're going to have people who can't do anything without AI. And then those who've learned other skills are going to be amazing when it's going to set them apart more.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to have some rapid fire questions for you. And the first one is for all the listeners, because I oftentimes get this question from a lot of early AI professionals. And I feel like the more people that they're there to answer this, the clarity on the answer is better. So what is your view of skill set and area of expertise, or how learning should look like for early AI professionals, knowing that things change so often? A lot of times when I'm sharing some roadmaps and stuff, I'm like, hey, these are the things that you should learn about agentic AI systems. These are the topics that you should learn about, or these are the tools that you should get your hands dirty with. I see some comments which I feel is very relevant, which is hey, if I'm going to spend 6 months learning all of these that you've put, things are going to be completely different after those 6 months. So how do you keep up to date without putting yourself in this rabbit hole of learning and relearning and being redundant or being out of date? What would your recommendation be for early AI professionals to keep themselves relevant and keep learning?
Well, another small question. You're good at these. That's rapid question, huh? Okay. Well, I'll try and give a rapid answer. I think my rapid answer is learning how you like to learn is the first step. In other words, what makes learning fun for you? What can you do without feeling exhausted? How do you learn best? Do you learn best from courses, from other people, from great podcasts like this one? And then lean into that thing you do well so that you can sustain the momentum. The second thing is, it's a little bit of an excuse to say, well, I'm going to be out of date. Even if that's true, if you do nothing, you're going to be more out of date. So the world is moving. I definitely know people who are ignoring AI completely and doing nothing at all with it because they're like, oh, that's very confusing and it seems, maybe I'll worry about that later. Well, they're going to be even more behind. So I actually don't have an answer for how to stay completely on the cutting edge at all times. I know I keep working on it because I know I'm making progress. And as long as I'm still learning, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. For young people, early career people, I would repeat that the most fundamental thing is learn how it is you want to learn so that you can keep doing it. And if you can't find some joy of learning, you're in trouble.
Sustainable learning it is then.
Yes.
So what would your secret be for how you learn? So that's another rapid fire question, which is how do you learn? How do you keep yourself relevant?
I learn from friends. So by asking conversation with friends and from audible books. So I'm not, ironically, even though I'm sitting on a podcast, I'm not as much of a podcast person as a full-length book person because I like the depth that you get from 8 or 10 hours of a single author on a point. Of course, I do read news and listen to podcasts and whatever, but I also learn from trying to solve problems. So once you face a problem is where, because once you do it yourself or work through it, that's where you get the real value. So building and releasing my own GPT to the world was a big learning process for me. And not everyone has done that.
Absolutely. I think that's what I love about you. You get there, get your hands dirty. And that's one thing I feel is what will keep you relevant or what will make you feel relevant. A lot of times, and it's just a funny story, right? A lot of times I speak with people who have just say 10 years of experience, which I feel is not a lot of experience. But even with that experience, people get into the manager roles and stuff, and they get their hands off of stuff. And they're like, hey, I feel like I don't know anything anymore. I feel dumb again. And your recommendation is bang on, because if you keep doing things yourself, you will keep realizing how easy it is for you to learn doing new things rather than not doing that and feeling that I'm dumb about it.
Yeah, learning is always scary because learning involves sometimes being wrong and having misunderstandings. And we're all very image conscious and we don't want to be the one to ask the really dumb question. One of our fellow, you may even know her. Do you know Molly Graham? Is that a name? Molly Graham is a leader from a couple of famous big tech companies. She'd be mad at me because they're escaping me now. I think it's Facebook and Google. But she had this thing where she says her superpower is being willing to be the idiot, to ask the dumbest possible questions and not be bothered. Yeah. And I think that is a superpower, to just be willing to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Because as you know, the thing is, if you have a question, usually other people in the room have the same question.
Yeah.
So I agree with her a lot that's a huge thing.
Love it. What would your AI tool be that you can't live without?
Ironically, I would not say my own GPT, because it's meant to model my thought. And so I already have access to my own thought. I don't need more of it. I think I'm sort of in the OpenAI ecosystem. And so for me, I think what I like most in there is playing with the different models, because some of them are tuned to give you fast conversational response and some of them are tuned for deeper. And I like the deep research models because I feel like they get to more ground truth. You asked earlier, how do you know if you can trust an answer from AI? I think learning to use the deeper models that cite their sources and give you links that you can go follow up.
Yeah.
I always double check what if it matters, I double check what AI has told me by going to some original source.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Absolutely. And maybe like one last thing is, what is that one task or like one agentic workflow that you would like to build, like that may not be possible right now, or that you've not built yet, but then what's that one workflow that you wish existed?
That I wish existed. Boy, I have this long list. I mean, I can't wait until the next time when I need to deal with like a travel problem, like a flight cancellation.
Yeah.
It can just be handled automatically. I think that like my flight was canceled, fix it, is what I would like to tell my agent. Like, get me home.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to anybody. Just tell me what gate to go to is like my dream. That's one of my dreams. If I think a little deeper,
Yeah.
what hasn't been built yet, and I'm talking to some people about building, is that personalized tutor. The tutor that not only knows what I need to learn, but every day is looking at all the podcasts, all the people on Coursera, all the people on different platforms, and saying the next thing that will take you the direction, the next little piece you need is this.
Yeah.
And then this. Because I believe we've never tested how fast a human brain can learn with an optimized personal teacher. And so I want that more than anything, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Totally makes sense. So I do would say that you secretly really reveal that you love traveling, or you do travel a lot, because the pain of traveling and canceled flights that you just mentioned, it's relatable. Yeah, I definitely want to like give that away. But now that I have a husband, I don't have to plan as many trips or book any of the tickets, but can totally relate.
I'm the family trip planner.
Planner, yeah.
So then when the trip goes wrong, I'm the fixer.
But very relatable problem. I'm sure like a lot of people would have the same pain point. So yeah, I mean, like people listening to this podcast, if you see that the startup has not yet been built yet, you could be the one building it.
I think it's an enormous opportunity, and that there will be, I think it's so underexplored. And by the way, I know you didn't ask this, but I think the traditional college degree is dead within 5 years, because all of us sitting in a class and listening to a person, we have a way to make a step change better education than that. And I think I don't know how universities evolve, but I can't imagine that people paying, maybe as much as $500,000 in total cost to sit in rooms and listen to people talk is the best tool we have now. So
I do agree. I mean, back when I was doing my undergrad, I did feel that a lot of the times education was lacking at least a decade behind of what was happening in the industry, because the curriculum would just not evolve. And that was slightly better when I came to my grad school, because there was a lot of like project-based learning. There was a lot of capstones that we were doing, and it meant we're literally working with industries, doing internships, or like doing capstone projects as it was called. That was way more beneficial than just like sitting in a room and like learning topics, right? And because I feel like to some extent that can be self-paced with the amount of information that you have on the internet, on like Coursera's and like deeplearning.ai. Getting that theoretical knowledge is not a bottleneck anymore, but getting that industrial expertise is what really matters.
Yeah. And I just think, those systems exist because they've existed at some level, again, back to the Greeks of like sit and listen to a lecture, that we're running on inertia, and that will change.
Well, thank you so much, Ethan. Thank you so much for this wonderful podcast. I know I gave you some hard questions wrapped up as easy ones, but then I loved the answers that you had for them. Thanks for sharing your tidbits about very interestingly about how like management should be thinking about adopting AI tools. I think that was very insightful. So thank you so much for joining the podcast, and I know for sure that people would love and learn a lot from this.
Well, I have to say, I've had the opportunity to be on many podcasts, and you have asked me more giant philosophical questions than anyone. And so I actually appreciate that. I say all the time, hard questions are fun. If it's easy, I'm just regurgitating something anyone could say. So thank you for pushing me, and that was a blast.
Thank you so much, Ethan.
All right.
Well, that was such a refreshing and grounded take on leadership in the ever evolving age of AI. A big thanks to Ethan for sharing his journey, lessons, and perspective on what truly matters in this era. If this sparked something in you, hit that subscribe button, check out the links below, and stay connected. This is Control Alt AI, and I'll see you next time.